So thank you, George, for the rousing welcome. I'm Robin Pike. I work with our old newspapers at the Library of Congress, in particular our digital old newspapers, some of which we are collecting born digitally, but some of which we are digitizing. And today I'm going to talk to you about the newspapers that we're digitizing in a product called Chronicling America. Who here has used Chronicling America before? Okay, so we have some fans, but a lot of newbies. Great. So, Chronicling America is a collection of digitized historic newspapers, for those of you who don't know. It is compiled by state institutions across the country, so state libraries, archives, universities, historical societies. We have had 53 partners from all 50 states, DC, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands over the past 20 years. It is co-sponsored by two federal agencies, so the Library of Congress sponsors a part of it, as well as the National Endowment for the Humanities, who provides grants to the state partners. Currently, we have over 4,500 titles and over 23.4 million pages, and we're adding more all the time. Here's a breakdown of the years that we have in Chronicling America. This past year, we added newspapers going back to 1736. So we have currently 1736 to 1963. The scope you see like going up in the chart is a reflection of the history of publishing newspapers in the U.S. and how it increased over time. There's not too many newspapers that exist or were even published from 1936. But we are adding more all the time, and we're actually really excited that Massachusetts is going to be one of our partners in the next 2 years. They're thinking of digitizing newspapers that go all the way back to 1704. And those of you who might not know, the early 1700s are on a completely different calendaring system. They use the Julian calendar instead of the Gregorian calendar, which we use today. So that was really interesting for us to create the information and structure that with the more modern calendar content. We also have a lot of ethnic presses in our newspapers. While Chronicling America specializes in major newspapers of a particular state and city, we also have a lot of local newspapers, and some of those are ethnic presses from the immigrant communities. Immigrants would often want to write in their language from their home country about the events going on in their home country as they were acclimating to life in the U.S. And these are a great source for research for genealogy, if you can read the language. If not, there's a lot of good translators out there. We also have newspapers in a lot of different languages in Chronicling America. So of course, English is the predominant language, but we have over 1 million pages in other languages. The next two highest languages that we have are German and Spanish, because the German and Hispanic immigrant communities have continued to be the most prolific in writing newspapers in their own languages. But we also have French, Yiddish, Czech, Polish, Finnish, Serbian, many, many, many more. I think we have 31 languages right now. Whoop. So everybody can use Chronicling America. We like to say that there's something in there for everyone. Whether you're a student or a teacher or other teaching support staff, whether you are a genealogist or a local historian. We also have a lot of journalism users, scientists, and other authors. They do research for their historically set books in Chronicling America. You can go to chroniclingamerica.loc.gov, or you can scan this handy-dandy QR code, and that will take you to the public search interface for our collection. We have a lot of information about the collection as well and how it was created, as well as some features. And you can see that our feature here is 100 years ago today. Took that screenshot a couple days ago, so it's a little out of date. But here you can discover our collections. You can get started by searching the collection by doing a basic search, which is at the top right-hand web page for every single Library of Congress web page. There you can type in your keywords and you can find those results in the newspapers. But if you want to do a little bit more refined research, you can use our advanced search, which is on the collections items tab. So it's a little hidden, but it's there. Here you can select to do a page search or a title and issue search if you're more interested in the information about the newspapers, which is what we call metadata. You can also narrow your searches by state, and by selecting the state, it will automatically provide you counties and cities and titles that are in each state, so you don't have to scroll through all 4,500 titles to find the ones in your particular state. You can also search by ethnicity and language if, say, you are interested in hearing about what African Americans were writing on a particular topic. And you can also add a start and end date to your search. So here is an example of a search. I'm doing a pages or full text search that will give me the page level results. I am searching for President Lincoln, but I don't know how the newspapers might have written about President Lincoln and how they would have phrased it. Did they say Abraham Lincoln? Did they say President Lincoln? So I'm using these words within 5 words of each other, which is a great way of searching whenever you don't know how the newspaper might have printed. It'll give you results where the words are near to each other. I'm not narrowing down by state, language, or ethnicity, but I am interested in what they were printing about Abraham Lincoln during his presidency and close after his presidency, after he was assassinated. So I have used the date filter as well. And this will take you to your search results. So our search terms, President and Lincoln, are highlighted. And you can see that in each snippet, it provides the first occurrence of the word underneath your search results. And you'll also see along the left-hand side that there are some facets where you can further narrow your results without starting a new search. So if you want to further refine your search, if you have a lot of results, you can again narrow by state, title, date, ethnicity, contributor. So if you're interested in only the newspapers that Minnesota Historical Society have contributed, you can find those there too. Once you click on a search result, you are taken to our image viewer. The top left panel has options to navigate the different types of files that we provide. So do you want to see a PDF? Do you just want to see the image? Do you want to see the image alongside the OCR? Which is our stands for optical character recognition. It's basically the words on the page. You can also use the top right panel to navigate pan and zoom around the page. And then you can download the entire page at the bottom left-hand corner. What I do want to point out is part of our top right panel is the scissor icon, which is what we call our clipping tool. And it allows you to draw a bounding box around an article that you might be interested in saving and clip the image. And then that gives you the saved article as well as a place to print or download, a link to directly link to the article, or if you are creating a website or sending something on social media, it gives you the embed links that you can do that as well. So you can find out more about the tips that I've mentioned today, as well as a lot of other resources in our Chronicling America, a guide for researchers. You can get to that through that QR code. This will take you to a lot of general search tips on how to use newspapers in your research, as well as more specific instructions on how to use the tools in the new search interface. We also prepare our Topics in Chronicling America research guides. These are a great place, in particular for teachers and students, but also anyone just beginning their research. And they're short summaries of a person, an event, or a subject. It provides a brief synopsis, a timeline based on articles in Chronicling America, selected search terms that we found useful in our research, as well as links directly to articles. Students in particular find those links directly to articles super useful. We have over 400 of these research guides, and we're adding more all the time. I also wanted to take a few moments to showcase some new collection highlights. So in the preparation for America 250, the semi-quincentennial of the United States, we have been digitizing a lot more 18th century newspapers. So we've recently put online our famous Join or Die issue that Benjamin Franklin printed, advocating for the colonies to rise up against foreign rule. We also have 12 issues that we've recently put online that contain the Declaration of Independence. These are really interesting issues because they feature the Declaration alongside news that was going on at the time, and we have issues from patriot, moderate, and loyalist newspapers. So you can see, you know, the difference between what the patriots were printing versus what the loyalists were printing. We've also put online in the past year our newspapers that printed the Federalist essays, also known as the Federalist Papers. We were calling them our Federalist Papers newspapers. And these talk a lot about the founding of the Constitution and justifying why this was important to the nation and why things were written a certain way. Now, we don't have all of the Federalist Papers in newspapers, but we do have 1 through 51 as well as 54 and 55. So you can read directly about those newspapers. We also digitize the entire year run of those newspapers, even the issues without the essays, because it's really important to read about those essays in context. Much like today, there were people submitting op-eds for and against the Federalist essays in the newspapers in the subsequent issues. You can read more about these read more about these newspapers in some of our research guides that we are creating. We have one for Join or Die, one about the American Revolution in general, from the Stamp Act forward. We also have one on the Bill of Rights, and we also have one specifically about the Federalist essays in newspapers. So if you have any questions about these or other resources, you can contact us at Ask a Librarian, where you can talk to one of many reference librarians on our staff. You can also follow us on our Headlines and Heroes blog, where we talk about the newspapers in our collections, as well as other collections, such as comics that we have in the Serial and Government Publications Division. And if you subscribe to our email newsletter, you can get updates of what's new in Chronicling America every month, as well as events that we might be hosting. So we are hosting an event specifically for teachers, support staff, and students to learn how to use Chronicling America for National History Day research coming up in October, and we will be posting about that soon. Any questions? Yes. Yeah.
Those links, great.
Got a question to go back. So I had a question back there first, and then we'll get to you.
The newspaper navigator allowed for photo matching, and it's been stopped. What are the obstacles to restoring that? And do you have any plans to do so, to bring back that code?
So there are, so we had a Sunset Newspaper Navigator. It was built as an experiment, and it had outlived its lifespan. We are looking at rerunning the code. First, because it was meant only run on 16 million pages, and now we have 23. So our first step is going to be recreating those data packages of just the images, but on 23 million pages and making those available. We're going to hopefully be doing that sometime in the next fiscal year, which ends September of next year. And the next step that we're going to be starting to investigate this year is what it would take to incorporate image searching into the main interface. We don't know what that's going to look like and if it's going to be possible based on the technology. So we will do our best. We have a question up here. Wait for the microphone.
Thank you. I usually just have a theater voice, so I figured I would project.
We are recording you.
Fabulous. So I'm a journalist, and I work with a number of small rural news outlets that, as you know, are on the brink of extinction, some of whom have already transitioned from print archives into digital only, some that are going out of business entirely. Are there opportunities to conserve their vast archives, especially in rural areas where the news would otherwise go completely extinct?
Yes. So what we recommend is working with the state partners who are the state partners in the Chronicling America program, National Digital Newspaper Program. They aren't just digitizing newspapers, but they are also preserving newspapers from their state. There are too many newspapers in the US for the Library of Congress to do it. We have a representative sample, but we do work closely with all of the states, whether it be a historical society or a library or an archive, where they are saving the news in their particular state. Those newspapers don't feed into Chronicling America, mainly because those are new newspapers and they are under copyright. However, those newspapers, if they get cataloged, they feed into what we call the Directory of U.S. Newspapers in American Libraries, which is a cataloging collection. So you can get linked from that catalog record at the library to wherever that newspaper might be in that state. Another question.
So I feel like not long ago there was a growing interest in expanding the number of Native American newspapers in Chronicling America. And I know there are already Native American newspapers in Chronicling America. And I'm curious where that sort of idea stands. And, my understanding is that there's some interesting challenges with Native American newspapers because the history of a tribe doesn't exist within just one state sometimes. And there's been the history of growing Chronicling America is often state by state. So I'm just kind of curious about Native American newspapers in Chron-Am and if there's still an interest in growing that number.
Sure. So it's interesting you say that because one of the newspaper projects that we are going to be putting online, hopefully this weekend, are the libraries, what we digitize from our collections that are Native American newspapers. We consulted with states, however, that were planning on digitizing newspapers from their states and bordering states. So our state partner in Arkansas is working with Oklahoma and is going to be digitizing Native American newspapers in their next 2-year project. So we didn't digitize newspapers that they had flagged. However, they're going to be putting more online in the next 2 years. So hopefully that answers your question. Great. We have one in the back.
Yes, with that, how about African American
Sure.
newspapers. Did you already say that?
So again, a lot of different states have digitized their own African American newspapers. Us at the library, we have undertaken a few different projects in the last 4 years where we digitized a collection of miscellaneous African American newspapers, which was like 1 issue or 5 issues of a particular title. Last year, we wrapped up digitizing a collection of 32 titles that were longer runs, and we now have a tool in the libraries using the back end of the library's catalog that has allowed us to identify more African American newspapers, and those we will be proposing to digitize in the next few years, as long as a state partner doesn't propose them first. I also know that there are other projects for African American newspapers across the U.S. So, for example, right here in D.C., Howard University is going to be digitizing a lot of their African American newspapers as well. So, back there with the microphone.
Yeah, thank you very much. You touched on this just briefly, and this might show my ignorance and needing to still learn more about how the site works. But you talked about copyright issues with some more current sort of publications. So I guess my question is, how current do some of the sort of major dailies in the U.S. go on this site? Like how current can you get? And then are there any of the major dailies that actually don't participate in, for whatever reasons, prevent you from accessing their archives?
Sure. So Chronicling America does not have content after 1963 because it is difficult to do the copyright research and prove that the newspapers are in the public domain. So everything in Chronicling America is in the public domain and can be freely used by the American people or anybody in the world, actually. If a newspaper is under copyright, if it's digitized or born digital, we have that in a separate system at the library called Stax. And it is accessible only on site, only in a few terminals in our reading rooms to abide by those copyright laws. In terms of your second part of your question, so the major dailies, so a newspaper like the New York Times is under copyright. We wouldn't be able to include it anyway. However, a newspaper like the New York Times is also available digitally in many other products, and we are not trying to compete with these other products. So our state partners and the library focus on digitizing newspapers primarily that aren't available elsewhere, so that we add something to the digitized newspapers available across the U.S. And I have another question up there.
Yeah, thank you. I was wondering about newspapers before, say, states were a part of America. So say like with Hawaii or with kind of more of the territories, is there work to chronicle those newspapers, kind of similar before we were the United States?
We already have those newspapers in Chronicling America. So generally, the area where it is now a state is digitized by that state. So over the past year, our partner in Wyoming contributed a lot of newspapers that were from Wyoming Territory before it became a state. We'll see some from Kentucky Territory or Ohio Territory. So yes, we do have those in Chronicling America. And the best way to know what's in Chronicling America and not is to search by the state, and then you can sort by date. And if you know when the date became a state, if you know the date when the state became a state, you can find the newspapers from when they were a territory. Yes.
So I tried doing a research project of 1855 newspapers in Minnesota. I was looking for something particular. And if you've looked at those, the previous digitizing, you just get the page by page, and it's hard to search because they aren't in any particular order. The news is probably thrown onto the paper as it came in. So it's not like you have a sports page and So I'm assuming that now it's a lot easier to search, that somebody has gone through and done the page by page and broken it down?
So not someone, something. So we have an automated process that creates the optical character recognition, or OCR, and that is what it's basically an algorithm that takes a best guess of what the letters are and what the words are on the page, and it creates coordinates around those words. And so it's not perfect all the time, but it's getting better. And so that is what you are searching when you are searching keyword searches in Chronicling America, what the tools thought the words were. We are undertaking a project. We've already re-OCR'd over 100,000 pages, and we are continuing to refine that process, and we are going to be re-OCRing hopefully another 500,000 or so this year. Our goal is to re-OCR everything that was contributed to Chronicling America before 2010. Because the technology around that point got better, and so the results are better from those pages. But everything beforehand, from 2005 to 2010, maybe to 2012, isn't as good, and we're fixing that.
For some of us newbies, can you talk a little bit more about the actual process of digitizing newspapers, assuming that it involves more than just scanning them?
Yep. So we digitize newspapers from a few different formats. The main one is microfilm, because it is the fastest and cheapest way to digitize. So a reel of microfilm is digitized in a scanner. There's software that breaks it up page by page, and then there's additional software that looks at like the structure of the newspaper, so the columns, the articles, the words, and it creates its guess of what's going on. We also digitize newspapers from print. You'll see that we did that with our 18th century content that we recently put online. And there were a couple reasons for doing this, not just for access, but because we plan on reusing these images in displays and exhibits, especially over the next year. So in this case, because we're digitizing from print, we have to work with our conservation department in the library, and they have to do work to make the print beautiful and stabilize it if there's any tears, so that we digitize from the best possible copy. And that takes a little bit longer to do the conservation and then the print digitization, and then the recognition part of the process is the same. And I think we probably have time for one more question.
Thanks. You mentioned the state partners a number of times. Is there one place that you can go to figure out who all the state partners are and
Yes.
what their newspapers?
So if you go to loc.gov/ndmp/awards, I think that's the URL. That is the list of all of the state partners and the years that they participated, because not everybody is participating in every year. It is 9:59, so I'm going to cut it off there. We can talk after. I do want to encourage everybody to come up to the very front near our wonderful sign language interpreter. I have some buttons, some magnets, some bookmarks, and some stickers that say I Heart Old News if you want to declare how much you love old newspapers. Thank you, everybody, for your time and attention.